Hey all, this is The Great Silence. I was able to get back to my favorite ghost town, Aurora, Nevada. As you will see, there really is not much here, so I need to do a lot of narration in this video. Gold was discovered nearby during the year 1860, and by 1863, 5,000 people were living here. But over the next 2 years, the population massively decreased as the mining companies ran out of ore to process. While Aurora did have some mining revivals that went into the 20th century, and lots of people lived normal, peaceful lives in this town, I'm going to focus on some of the Wild West period of the 1860s as I show you the main streets of how the town used to be. The street I'm walking south on right now is Antelope Street. Antelope Street continues to the other side, which I will come back to later. To the east over here is Pine Street. And over here is the west side of Pine Street. And you can't really see it today because of the overgrowth, but the road would have continued over there, as I will try to show you. You will notice one of the walls is still left over here. There are some foundations to some of the buildings still around. One thing I wanted to point out as I was here over the summer of 2023, the winter and spring was very dramatic with snow and water. One thing that was obvious was the amount of erosion that took place, like right here. Here are some of the remains of what was probably a house. Most of the main buildings on the main streets of town were made of brick. The High Point Hill in the background is called Lover's Leap. It is a good reference point. Looking back to the east, a hotel that was known as the Merchants Exchange would have been just off to our left. Pine Street would have started at the intersection I began at and continued past here. I was pretty sure I was walking on what was Pine Street continuing through here. You will notice I am parallel with the stamp mill remains in the distance. That's another good reference point. Again, the Merchants Exchange Hotel would have been ahead off to my left. Pine Street would have gone right by it, with the lower level going below the road. The Chinese would have lived following the road in the direction behind me. Also, during one of the revivals, they built a red light district there. So this is not exactly right, but it gives you an idea how things would have been. Since we had such a long winter and spring with lots of water, it really felt like the bushes and plant life were a lot bigger than the times I've been here before. So it made finding things a lot more difficult. You will see some of the remains as I head back to the intersection. We were just that way on Pine Street. Now over here looking south on Antelope Street, just to our left where those two posts are, was where the Exchange Saloon was. This is the most popular of the many saloons in town. A lot of the Wild West action happened at this saloon and around it. For example, Lee Vining, the man, died nearby here. It's a bit of a mystery, but apparently he died by the discharge of his own gun. Gunfighter William Carter was killed here too, but I will talk about that in another video. During the spring of 1864, there was a guy named Charles Wheaton who was 55 years old, and he was trying to win over a younger married woman. He would send her letters and go to her house while the husband, William Lake, was not around. Of course, she turned him down, but it led to a showdown on this street right here on September 27, 1864. Charles Wheaton was walking up Pine Street like this with his Colt gun ready, and William Lake confronted him with his shotgun. Lake let Wheaton have it with first a discharge hitting Wheaton in the chest, side, and his right arm. The second discharge hit him in the face and neck. Lake had a peaceful reputation and people knew about the situation, so he was easily let off with a justifiable homicide. The Esmeralda Hotel, which was also the main courthouse, would have been somewhere here on the right. Some brick foundations over there. One thing I wanted to point out is the road dips on the right side here. You can see the erosion the winter and spring water runoff did. The roads are not as smooth as the last time I was here. This is the remains of the Last Chance Saloon. What happened to Aurora is during the mid-20th century, the town was slowly picked apart by people recycling the bricks for use elsewhere. So eventually the buildings in the town were no more. It is kind of sad, and I wish the more of the town was preserved. These days, after what I saw on this trip, I would just hope someone takes care of the roads more than just allowing erosion to take over. Looking back to the west gives us something close to this. Just beyond where the road splits here is where the Murphy house would have been. The road on the right is Wide West Street. Remember that because I'll come back to that. But I continue on the left here, which would be Pine Street. Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, lived here for 6 months as he tried to get rich quick as a miner before he was a newspaper reporter in Virginia City. He lived all around Aurora, but there was a cabin they called Mark Twain's cabin. Unfortunately, I've been a little bit off on this in the past. After looking at this picture, one needs to be further up so you can see Lover's Leap Hilltop in the background. This is walking along Wide West Street. A lot of the mining took place on this side. On top of the hill above is the remains of the Del Monte Mill. It was one of the main mining operations in Aurora during the 1860s. They had a dispute with the Pond Mining Company. To protect their claim, the Pond hired a bunch of professional gunfighters known as the Daly Gang, with John Daly being the leader. This is where the Daly Gang home and headquarters was, with that little shack behind it. There was an election for city marshal with many candidates. John Daly got one of his men to run and was elected. So Daly and members of the gang became deputy marshals. For about a year, the gang took over the town. Gambling, prostitution, drunkenness, and fighting increased, with the police charging licensing fees and then pocketing the money. It has been speculated that over 30 homicides took place at Aurora over the 4 years of the town's mining boom in the 1860s. But by January of 1864, the Daly Gang had lost their power base. The two mining companies settled their dispute out of court in Carson City. And when John Daly came back to Aurora, he found out a new city marshal had been elected, which got rid of all the Daly Gang deputies. So the Daly Gang were now unemployed. But they had one final score they wanted to settle before leaving town. Looking north, that is where I started from. I'm going to turn around and head south again. In the beginning of February of 1864, the Daly Gang set up a guy, William Johnson, by getting him drunk during the night and then murdering him about 50 feet or so ahead. Daly had blamed him for the death of a friend 10 months earlier. This murder would be the one that the people of Aurora would rise up against the gang once and for all. After the murder, the people formed a vigilante group of over 600 citizens called the Citizen Safety Committee. They rounded up the 4 Daly Gang members responsible for the killing. Up on the hill in the background, there was a lookout area known as Armory Hall. Here we are overlooking the town. Armory Hall and the hanging site would have been up a little higher behind me and to my left. The reason I chose this spot is I was about to fly my drone around, and this was a good spot for it. But for our purposes, imagine 5,000 people looking up here at around 1:30 in the afternoon. A cannon fires, giving the signal that tells the hangman to cut the rope. John Daly and the 3 other members of the gang drop down into the trap door to their deaths. The Daly Gang was no more, and any other members soon left town for their own health. It's been said that John Daly returns as a ghost here at the site of his execution on the 9th day of any month at midnight. Lots more can be said about Aurora, but I want to give a shout out to the following authors for being the inspiration and most of the information in this video: Roger McGrath, Sue Silver, and of course Clifford Shaw. I will link their books in the description. I hope you enjoy this video as much as I enjoyed making it.